She laughed in my face when I asked where she was going that night. Everyone at the barbecue heard it. The kind of laugh people use on someone they think is a fool. 5 minutes later, she sent a message she clearly didn't mean for me to see. And when I replied with one short sentence, the entire night flipped upside down so violently that even I didn't see it coming. Before I tell you what happened, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment telling me if you'd have handled this differently. The whole thing started on a Saturday evening in late August. You know the kind: warm air, quiet neighborhood, kids riding bikes, the smell of ribs drifting over fences. We were at our friends Mark and Linda's backyard cookout, a small gathering, maybe a dozen people. I was manning the grill, joking with Mark about football season, sipping a beer, enjoying the kind of weekend simplicity that reminds you life isn't all work and bills. My wife, Melissa, was on the other side of the yard, sitting with a circle of people I barely knew from her office. She'd been distant the past month. More makeup, late nights, vague explanations, nothing dramatic, but just off. The kind of small changes you notice only because you've spent years watching the same person every day. Every few minutes she'd glance at her phone, smile, hide the screen, type fast, tilt it away. I tried not to think about it, but the tension was starting to build behind my eyes. Not jealousy, just that sense that something wasn't lining up. When the burgers were done, I walked over to ask if she wanted one. She didn't even look at me. Not hungry, she muttered, still tapping her phone. Everything okay? I asked. Her friends went quiet. She glanced up at me like I'd just embarrassed her in front of the whole room. I'm fine, Daniel. Don't hover. Hover. Word stung more than it should have. But I shrugged it off, smiled politely, walked back toward the grill. I'd learned long ago that arguing in public never ends well. About 20 minutes later, she stood up, smoothed her dress, and announced loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm heading out for a bit. Work thing. Work thing got on a Saturday. At 7:40 p.m. Someone joked, "You guys really can't catch a break, huh?" Melissa laughed in a way she never laughed at home. Sharp, carefree, almost giddy. I walked after her. Where exactly are you going? She didn't even pause. Don't worry about it. And then came the laugh. The same one people give when they think they're untouchable. The guest chuckled awkwardly. I felt something tighten deep inside me. Something that doesn't show on the face but changes the air around a man. She got in her car and drove off. I stood there watching her taillights shrink into the dark. Mark wandered over. Everything all right, buddy? Yeah, I said automatically, though it came out flat. I reached into my pocket and felt my phone vibrate. A new message. It was from Melissa. Meant for someone else. Leaving now. Be there in 20. Don't start without me. The corner of my vision blurred. Like the whole yard tilted a little. The world didn't explode. Men my age don't explode. We calcify. Harden. Everything slowed down. I stared at the message for a long, quiet 5 seconds. Then my thumb moved on its own. I typed. Hope you and whoever's waiting enjoy your night. Hit send. I didn't yell. Didn't storm off. Didn't ask questions. Just stood there next to the grill as the smoke curled up into the night. 10 seconds passed. Then my phone buzzed again. Hard. Fast. Multiple times. Calling. Texting. Calling again. I didn't answer. Her friends across the yard suddenly noticed their phones too, whispering to each other, their faces turning pale as they looked in my direction. Mark met my eyes, confused, trying to read me. Then one of the women said, "She's calling us. Something's wrong." Another added, "She says she needs to get home." Now, that was the moment. The very second. The night began cracking open. I stood still, hands in my pockets, while Melissa's car screeched back into the driveway. 20 minutes later, brakes crying loud enough for the neighbors to peek out their windows. She ran into the backyard like someone escaping a burning building, eyes wide, hair messy, clutching her purse as if it were filled with secrets she couldn't afford to drop. "Daniel, can we talk?" "Now." Everyone froze. I didn't move. Her voice shook. "Please." I looked at her for a long moment. And for the first time in weeks, she looked afraid of what I knew. And I hadn't even begun asking questions yet. Melissa pulled me toward the side of the yard, away from the guests, practically dragging me by the wrist. Her hands were shaking so hard, she nearly dropped her phone twice. I didn't resist. I didn't say a word. I just followed, calm as a man walking into a courtroom where he already knows the verdict. When we were far enough from the others, she spun around, eyes wide, breathing fast. Daniel, that text, why did you write that? I stared at her, expression steady. Why did you send yours? Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out except a dry, broken whisper. It wasn't what you think. The classic line. Always the classic line. I think, I said, it wasn't meant for me. She flinched like I'd hit her. It was a joke, she said quickly. With coworkers. Just teasing around. I didn't answer. Silence is the oldest lie detector in the world. She rushed on, voice quickening, cracking. It's nothing, Daniel. Nothing. I swear. Behind us, you could hear the party continuing awkwardly. People pretending not to stare, pretending not to listen, pretending they didn't see Melissa running back like her life was on fire. A couple of them looked over their shoulders. I kept my voice level. Then why did you come home? She blinked. What? If it was nothing, why did you rush back? She swallowed hard. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of her dress. Because your message scared me. Interesting, I said. A joke shouldn't scare you. She exhaled sharply, pacing in a small, frantic circle like a trapped animal. Daniel, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. Didn't call her names. I'd learned years ago that a calm man is far more frightening than an angry one. Who were you meeting? No one. It wasn't a meeting. Your message said, don't start without me. She froze. Absolute stillness. The kind that tells you the truth before the mouth ever speaks it. I stepped closer, just enough for her to feel the weight of my gaze. Who was waiting for you, Melissa? Her lips parted, but the sound never came. She looked down, voice finally collapsing. I don't want to do this here. Not in front of everyone. Please, Daniel. Let's go home. I looked back at the yard. Half the guests were fake smiling, half pretending to check their phones, and Mark was standing with a beer in his hand like he wasn't sure whether to intervene or flee. She tugged my arm again. Daniel, please. That word again. That shaking, terrified plea. I nodded once. All right. Let's go. We walked through the yard together. The silence behind us was louder than any whisper. People parted for us like we were a funeral procession. Melissa avoided eye contact with everyone, trembling so hard her keys jingled in her hand. She got into the passenger seat without waiting for me. The moment I closed my door, she burst out. Can you please just listen to me before you get angry? I'm not angry, I said. Her eyes darted to me, almost scared by how calm I was. Then what are you? Curious. She covered her face with both hands. This is a misunderstanding. Great. Clear it up. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. She lowered her hands, and her voice came out thin as paper. I was meeting a friend. Which friend? Silence. That told me more than any confession. Melissa, I said slowly, you don't have to lie creatively. You're not good at it. A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't want you to find out like this. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The streetlights cast a dull glow on her shaking profile. Find out what? I asked exactly. She looked out the window, unable to meet my eyes. I've been talking to someone. The world didn't spin. My heart didn't pound. I just felt a sharp, cold clarity, like stepping into a room with all the windows open in winter. How long? A few weeks. Who? Someone from work. Name? She hesitated. I don't want to say. That was the moment something inside me shifted. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. All right, I said quietly. Let's go home. You can tell the truth in a place where no one else will hear it. She looked terrified, but she nodded. I drove. Neither of us said a word. The house felt different when we walked in. Heavier, darker, as if it already knew something had broken. She stood in the living room, arms wrapped around herself, waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I just calmly asked, "What were you planning to do tonight?" She whispered, "I don't know." "Who were you going to see?" Her voice cracked. "I told you, someone from work." "Say his name." She looked at me for the first time since the yard. Her eyes were wet, pleading, desperate. "Daniel, please don't make me." I held her gaze. "Why not?" Her breath hitched. Her chin trembled. And when she finally spoke, her answer was barely audible, just enough to confirm what I'd already felt tightening in my chest the entire night. But I didn't react, not yet. I simply stood there, calm, steady, watching her unravel piece by piece under the weight of her own choices. And that's where the real story began. She finally whispered his name, barely moving her lips, as if saying it any louder would summon something she wasn't ready to face. Evan. A simple name, but it landed in the room like a dropped stone. I didn't react. Not a twitch, not a flinch. She seemed almost disappointed by that, like some part of her expected a dramatic explosion she could hide behind. But there was nothing for her to hide from. Just my silence, steady and cold, the kind that makes people confess more than they planned. "It wasn't supposed to be anything," she said, pacing, running her hands through her hair. "We were just talking. I was venting. You and we've been distant." There it was, the justification stage, the chapter of excuses. She talked fast, breathless, as if speed could outrun truth. He understood things. He listened. He noticed when I was stressed, when I was overwhelmed at work. He paid attention. I nodded slowly. "And you liked the attention?" She froze. "I didn't, Melissa," I said, my voice even. "Let's at least be honest with each other tonight." Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, she looked like someone who wanted to step backward out of her own life. "Yes," she whispered. "I liked it. More than I should have." She wiped her face with trembling hands. "But I didn't plan for it to go this far." "How far did it go?" I asked. Her breath caught, and she stared at the floor as if the grain of the wood could save her. "Talking, messaging, lunch, coffee. I just needed someone to talk to." "And tonight?" I asked. "What were you meeting him for tonight?" She clenched her jaw. "To talk." "About what?" "About ending it." Interesting. People always claim that the night they're caught is the night they were planning to stop. It's the oldest rewrite of the truth in the book. And the message you sent him, "Don't start without me," that was about ending things? She winced like the words were knives. "I know how it looks. I know what it says." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I panicked when you replied. I realized how it must have looked to you. I shouldn't have gone. I know that now." That line made me laugh, quietly, without humor. "You realized it after I caught you." She shut her eyes, and a fresh wave of tears slipped out. "Daniel, please, I don't want to lose us over something that hasn't even." Her voice faded into a whisper. "I never cheated. Not physically." I watched her for a long moment. "Melissa," I said, "you don't need physical contact to betray someone." Her eyes filled again. "I know." We stood there in heavy silence, the kind that fills a room like smoke. She wiped her cheeks again. "I just needed to feel seen." "So you chose someone else?" "I didn't choose him. It just happened." "Nothing just happens," I said. "You choose who you respond to. You choose who you confide in. You choose whose messages you hide." She sank onto the couch like her legs gave out. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." She looked up, eyes swollen. "Are you going to leave me?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, because I wasn't going to give her the comfort of knowing where the ground was. She folded forward, elbows on her knees, face buried in her hands. "I messed everything up," she whispered. "I ruined everything." I walked to the chair opposite her and sat down. Calm, focused, no anger. "Tell me the rest," I said. She lifted her head slowly. "What rest?" "Melissa," I said quietly. "People don't run home like their hair's on fire because of innocent texting. Her mouth trembled. I told you everything. No, I said. You told me the part that makes you look less guilty. Tell me the real reason you came home so fast. She swallowed hard. Because he was already there. The room seemed to shrink. Not from drama, from clarity. Where? At the restaurant. At the bar. He was waiting. And what were you going to do once you got there? She hesitated too long. That hesitation was its own confession. Melissa, I said softly, say it. She covered her mouth. I don't know, she whispered. But she did know. And so did I. She whispered again, voice cracking. I wasn't going to sleep with him. I didn't say anything. Just watched her unravel. She tucked her knees up on the couch like a child trying to disappear. I swear, Daniel, I swear, I was confused. I wanted attention. I wanted to feel like someone cared, but I didn't want to lose you. Yet you were willing to risk me. She nodded, sobbing harder. Yes, I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking, I interrupted gently. Just not about us. She cried harder. I don't know what's wrong with me. You do, I said. She shook her head violently. No, I don't. Then let me tell you, I said, and her eyes lifted, terrified, bracing for a storm she still didn't understand was already over her head. You thought, I said slowly, that I'd never catch you. She froze, silent, not breathing. She knew that was the truth, and now she had to face it. For a long moment, she didn't move at all. My words hung between us like a blade suspended in midair. Then she finally exhaled, a shaky, broken breath, as if admitting that truth drained the last of her strength. You're right, she whispered. I didn't think you'd notice. It wasn't said with arrogance. It was said with guilt, with shame, with the weight of someone who finally sees the shape of her own betrayal laid bare in front of her. I've always trusted you, I said. I never checked your phone, never questioned you, never assumed the worst. That trust made you careless. She wiped her face again, but her hands kept trembling too much to be effective. I know, and I took advantage of it. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I thought you were drifting away. So instead of talking to me, you talked to him. She nodded miserably, and he listened. Of course he did, I said. Men like that always listen, until they get what they want. She winced like the words stung. The room felt heavy, charged, like a storm rolling in but never quite breaking. I leaned back, letting silence work for me. Silence, when used right, is a scalpel. It cuts deeper than shouting ever could. She stood up suddenly, pacing the living room in small, frantic circles. I can fix this. I just have to block him. Delete everything. I'll quit my job if I have to. Quitting your job won't erase what you've already done. She stopped pacing and looked at me with those wide, desperate eyes. Daniel, please. I know I messed up. I know I crossed lines. But I stopped before it went too far. No, I said calmly. You stopped because I caught you. That's not the same thing. She sagged back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what else to say. Then don't say anything, I told her. Let's take a moment and let the truth settle. She nodded shakily. The house creaked softly. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Life went on, uncaring about the collapse happening inside these walls. After a minute, she spoke again, voice fragile as glass. Do you want to know why I liked him? You can tell me. He made me feel interesting. She took a breath that trembled at the edges. Like I mattered. You matter to me, I said. You just didn't like the way it felt anymore. She blinked at me, stunned by how precisely that landed. Daniel. You looked for excitement, I continued. Something new, something flattering. And you convinced yourself that if it wasn't physical, you weren't really doing anything wrong. She covered her mouth. I hate that you're right. I know. She shifted uncomfortably, guilt twisting through her posture. What happens now? I stood up slowly. She tensed, as if expecting me to pack a bag right then and there. But I walked past her to the small table near the stairs. I opened the drawer. Her eyes followed me, confused and scared. What are you doing? Something I should have done hours ago. I pulled out my old work notebook, the one with the stiff leather cover, and flipped it open. She stared at it like it was a weapon. Daniel, what is that? A record, I said simply, of everything we talk about tonight. Her breath hitched. Why? Because your story already changed 3 times. She swallowed. Hard. So you don't trust me? No, I said. I don't. She looked as though the ground dropped out beneath her feet. I want the truth, I said. All of it. Because if there's anything left you haven't told me, tonight is your last chance. She sat very still, not crying now, just quiet, thinking, wrestling with something inside her. Finally, she whispered, there is something else. I nodded. Go on. She closed her eyes for a moment, collecting herself. 3 weeks ago, she said, after work, I went to his place. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She rushed on, panic rising in her voice. Nothing happened. I swear it. Daniel, I swear on everything. I needed to see him outside the office. To talk without everyone watching. Why his place? Because he suggested it, and I didn't want anyone to see us together. That, I said, is what people say when they're doing something they know they shouldn't. She nodded miserably. I know. She wiped her cheeks again, shaking harder now. But when I got there, I realized how wrong it was. I sat on his couch for maybe 10 minutes. We talked about work, about stress. And then he tried to kiss me. My expression didn't change. Did he? No, she said quickly. I pulled away. I told him I was married. I left right after. I didn't write anything down yet. I studied her instead. The human face is an encyclopedia when it's under pressure. She seemed desperate, but not lying. Not now. And after that, I asked. She hesitated. He kept messaging me, telling me he understood me better than you do, that I deserved more attention, that he could make me happy. And you believed him. She lowered her head. I wanted to believe someone did. That landed harder than I expected. Not because it hurt, but because it was honest. Too honest for comfort. Tonight, she continued, I wasn't going there to be with him. I was going to end things before I did something unforgivable. Messaging him wasn't unforgivable. I asked. Going to his apartment wasn't unforgivable. I know, she said, sobbing again. I know, and I'm ashamed. I finally wrote one sentence in the notebook. She flinched at the sound of the pen scratching. Daniel, what does that mean? I closed the book gently. It means I needed to hear the truth before deciding anything. She froze. Deciding what? I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt her. Because I wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. The air between us tightened again. Heavy. Waiting. She whispered, Daniel, please don't leave. But I didn't speak. Not yet. She waited for my answer with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, the kind of silence that makes a person's heartbeat sound louder than their words. She could feel that something in me had shifted, even if I hadn't said it outright. And she was right. Everything had shifted. Daniel, she whispered, say something. Anything. I walked past her and sat down on the edge of the coffee table, facing her directly. Not angry. Not yelling. Just steady, controlled. The kind of calm that makes people nervous because they can't predict what comes next. I'm thinking, I said. Her breath shook. Thinking about what? About what our marriage actually is, I said. About what it's become. About whether it still exists at all. She shook her head quickly, panicked. It does. It does. This is just a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I cut in quietly. A mistake is snapping during an argument. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a series of choices. She covered her face. I know. And you want forgiveness, I said. Yes. Desperately. I leaned forward. Melissa, you didn't come home because you felt guilty. You came home because you got caught. Her shoulders crumpled. That's not true. It is, I said. If you hadn't sent that message to me by mistake, you'd be sitting at a bar right now, with him waiting for you. She had no answer for that. Her silence said everything. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the quiet street, the glow of the street lamps, the shadows of passing cars. For years, I said, still looking outside, I believed that loyalty was something people either had or didn't have. I thought if you love someone, you choose them every day, no matter how boring, how stressful, how imperfect life gets. Behind me, I heard a soft, broken sound. I did choose you, she whispered. No, I said, turning back toward her. You chose him every time you responded to his messages. Every time you deleted a notification. Every time you dressed up for work hoping he'd notice. Every time you lied to my face about where you were going. Every time you walked toward him instead of me. She collapsed into her hands again. I let her sit with it. I wasn't trying to break her. I was trying to make her understand. After a long stretch of silence, I sat back down across from her. Tell me, I said quietly, if I hadn't replied to that message, what would you have done tonight? She inhaled sharply. I don't know. That, I said, is the most honest thing you've said all night. Another silence. Heavy. Suffocating. She finally whispered, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose what we have. I want to fix this, Daniel. I'll do anything. Anything. Yes, she said instantly. Therapy. Counseling. Total transparency. I'll quit my job. Delete every account. Change my number. Whatever you want. I watched her for a long moment. Then I did something she didn't expect. I stood up, walked to the drawer by the hallway, and returned with a small digital recorder. I placed it gently on the coffee table. Her eyes widened. What is that? A recorder, I said calmly. I want you to say everything you told me tonight again. Clearly, directly, without softening it. She looked horrified. Why? Because I need the truth preserved, I said. Not changed. Not rephrased next week when you decide you want to rewrite the story to make it easier to live with. Daniel, she whispered, you think I'd lie again? I think you already did, I said. She stared at the recorder like it was a weapon. I can't, she whispered. I can't say all of that again. Then you're not ready to fix anything, I said. She shook her head slowly. Are you trying to trap me? No, I said. I'm trying to protect myself. Her voice crumbled. Please don't do this. I didn't ask you to cheat, I replied softly. I didn't ask you to lie. I didn't ask you to build a second life behind my back. All I'm asking for is the truth without editing. She stared at me, trembling. Then, slowly, painfully, she reached for the recorder with shaking fingers. Tell me when to start, she whispered. I pressed the button. The red light blinked. And she confessed. Every detail, every message, every visit, every feeling she shouldn't have had, every intention she'd buried, every moment she'd chosen him over me. Her voice cracked over and over, but she kept going. When she was done, she was shaking so violently she could barely breathe. I turned off the recorder. She whispered, Daniel, what now? I stood up, feeling something settle inside me, a clarity I had been avoiding all night. Now, I said quietly, I tell you the part one didn't say before. Her eyes lifted, full of fear. What part? I took a slow breath. Earlier tonight, before you even confessed, I already knew something was wrong. I already knew things weren't adding up. I already knew you were hiding something. And I already promised myself that no matter what I heard, I wouldn't make any decisions in anger. She swallowed hard. So what decision are you making? I looked at her, not with hatred, not with rage, but with something far more final. I'm choosing myself, I said. She blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said steadily, I'm not going to try to fix a marriage you already walked away from. Her entire face collapsed. No, Daniel, please, you didn't choose us when it mattered, I said. You chose him. So I'm choosing me. She reached out, desperate, but I stepped back. Not coldly, just firmly. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, I said. Tomorrow, you'll start packing. She burst into tears, loud, heartbreaking, begging tears, but I didn't move toward her. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt everything, and none of it was enough to rebuild what she'd destroyed. I walked to the hallway door, paused once, and said quietly, You didn't lose me tonight. You lost me weeks ago. Tonight, you just finally saw it. Then I went upstairs, leaving her in the living room, alone with the truth she had tried so hard to outrun. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace. If you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts.